I've always loved camping. The fresh air, the beautiful scenery, and the scenes of adventure have always drawn me in. So, when my friends and I decided to plan a camping trip in the forest, I was ecstatic. Little did I know, this camping trip would turn into a terrifying experience that would haunt me for years to come. We arrived at the campground at the edge of the forest, our tents and supplies in tow. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the trees. We quickly set up our tents and built a fire, eager to start our adventure in the morning. As we stood around the fire, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The forest seemed quiet, too quiet. Not even the sounds of crickets or rustling leaves could be heard. But I pushed this thought aside, thinking I was just being paranoid. It wasn't until we settled into our tents for the night that things started to take a sinister turn. I lay in my sleeping bag, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a strange noise outside. It sounded like a low growl, but I brushed it off as an animal and closed my eyes. But the noise didn't stop. It grew louder and closer, sending shivers down my spine. I could hear my friends stirring in the tents, also sensing that something was off. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered, my heart racing. My friends confirmed that they heard it too, and we all huddled together in one tent, afraid to go outside and face whatever was making that noise. It wasn't until the sun started to rise that the growling finally stopped. We were grateful to see the light of the day, but we knew we had to investigate the source of the noise. After grabbing our flashlights, we cautiously made our way out of the tent and into the forest. The once beautiful and sincere surroundings now felt ominous and foreboding. Despite our fear, we continued on, determined to find what was lurking in the shadows. We followed the sound of the growling until we came across a cave. It was a small entrance, barely visible through the thick bush. But the growling was coming from inside, with a mixture of curiosity and terror. We cautiously entered the cave. The air was musty and damp, and our flashlights barely pierced through the darkness. As we made our way deeper into the cave, the growling grew louder and more intense. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I couldn't feel my palms growing sweaty. Finally, we reached a large chamber, and our flashlights illuminated a pair of glowing eyes staring back at us. We stood frozen, facing a massive wolf-like creature, its fur matted and eyes filled with malice. Its growls echoed throughout the chamber, sending chills down our spines. In a panic, we turned and ran, the creature's snarls and howls ringing in our ears. We ran for what it felt like hours until we finally reached the safety of our campsite. We quickly packed our belongings and left, never looking back. The experience left us unshaken and terrified, and we promised to never speak of it again. But as the years went by, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched whenever I stepped into the forest. Every rustle of leaves or howl of the wind felt like a reminder of that terrifying night. It wasn't until years later, when I decided to go camping again, that I would come to face with that creature once more. This time, I was alone. I had chosen a different campground, far from the forest where my friends and I had encountered the monster. But as I set up my tent, the feeling of unease returned. I pushed it aside, determined to not let my fear control me. That night, as I lay in my sleeping bag, I heard the familiar low growl. This time, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my flashlight and bravely made my way towards the source of the sound. My heart was pounding as I entered the forest, my flashlight shaking in my hand. I could hear the growling getting louder, and my steps grew slower with each passing second. Finally, I reached the same cave from years ago. The monster was still there, its glowing eyes staring back at me with a mixture of anger and hunger. I could feel my body freeze in fear, but my curiosity took over. I wanted to know what this creature was and why it had haunted me for so long. With trembling hands, I slowly approached the creature, its growls growing louder and more aggressive. But instead of attacking me, it simply retreated to the back of the cave as it was afraid of me. But as my flashlight illuminated the back of the cave, I saw something that ran my blood cold. There, lying in the corner, was the skeletal remains of a human. It was then I realized that this creature was not a wolf, but a werewolf. In that moment, everything clicked in place. The growls, the sense of being watched, the fear that had followed me for years. It was all because of this creature, this werewolf, who had been terrorizing the forest for who knows how long. I quickly beckoned away from the forest, my mind racing with fear and shock. I ran back to my campsite and packed my things and determined to leave this cursed place and never return. As I drove away, I couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and sadness. I was relieved to have finally uncovered the truth behind that terrifying camping trip, but sad that it took me so many years to face my fears and find closure. To this day, I haven't told anyone about my encounter with the werewolf. Some say it was all in my head, a figment of my imagination. But I know the truth, and it will haunt me forever. The forest may still hold many mysteries and dangers, but I know that I have faced the scariest one of all.